You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Happy 4th of July. It is episode 71 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my podcast partner in crime, blogger, writer, TV personality, and all-around genius, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hey, what's going on, Dave?
Another beautiful, well, now July in Georgia.
Means it's just the temperature's just ticking up.
Thank God. Need those air conditioners to break.
Dave's got bills to pay.
They don't break at 70.
You need those suckers to run all day.
And not well, preferably. How was your week?
It's been good. How's your week going?
It's going pretty good.
Lots of turmoil for others means it's going pretty well for you.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't care how much it costs. I'm on the way.
You know, while we're talking about air conditioning, this is less funny and something that I've thought about. Maybe we'll talk about prisons and things at some point on the podcast. But, you know, especially down here where we have so many prisons in a lot of our counties, like a lot of them only have one or two dorms or wings that are air conditioned. And you can buy fans for inmates that are like approved by the Department of Corrections, but otherwise it causes like riots and all kinds of things because there's no, like, their moods and everything are just they're on edge and they're sweaty all the time and angry and miserable. And as a guard, I would hate having to work in an environment like that. Like, going outside is one thing, you know you're outside, but can you imagine having to like pace the halls of a prison with angry, sweaty people who are hot and you're hot? Like, that would just be the icing on the cake of misery.
Well, that happened in Watts every year. Was when LA got really, really hot, there'd be Watts riots. You know, people would be out in the streets, crime would go up.
Wow.
So yeah, it definitely has an effect on temperament. And if you want your spouse to have a good temperament, call me.
Dr. Cool.
So, Chris Carr calls for automatic discharges of student loans for disabled veterans.
This is one you've been wanting to talk about for a while. But we saved it for All Things America.
For All Things America.
Mm-hmm.
So, Attorney General Chris Carr joined a group of 51 attorneys general urging U.S. Department of Education to automatically forgive the student loans of veterans who became totally and permanently disabled in connection with their military service. Of course, this is a bipartisan coalition, bipartisan being, you know, a typically scary word.
Yes, when everyone unites to have equally terrible ideas.
And this happened back on Memorial Day.
It did.
And it says, prepares to honor fallen troops on Memorial Day. The fallen troops have already got their student loans forgiven.
So, there's a lot to this. And, of course, you know, if you come out, it's just like during the legislature when they were in session and all the bills about veterans and veterans benefits were coming to the table and through committee, and you just sound like a complete jerk if you're not supporting special treatment for veterans. This is not one of those things that I would like protest in the streets over. I think the timing was terrible for the release of it. I think it's total pandering, and you know, I never support that. Like, no matter what it is, if you're doing it for a specific image, then I'm not going to support your cause. But one of the things that I have a bigger problem with is that it's for the program can apply to permanently disabled veterans' kids.
Right.
I mean, you already have an issue with, or not when I say you, like, it's already, I think everyone can understand when somebody is permanently disabled and they're unable to work, like, of course, it would be difficult to have a job and to pay these loans. And if they're getting disability or any type of compensation, it doesn't really make sense to transfer one set of funds to another government agency like that. Like, of course, that doesn't really make sense. But it says that in this press release and that went out all across the country, basically, 42,000 veterans are eligible. 9,000 had applied to have their loans discharged as of April of this year, and 25,000 of them have loans in default. So you already have a difference between the ones who are actually in default versus the ones who just have loans that qualify. Like, they're permanently disabled, but they're able to make their payments, whether it be because of a spouse or some other reason or a slush fund of money. I don't know. But you're already extending this beyond the people who need it. Like, they're not in default. But one stupid question that I have that you may know the answer to is how do these situations come to be that they have student loan debt in the first place?
Well, not all veterans are enlisted. Officers have, and I'm sure there's not 45,000 of them. Officers may carry student loan debt and enlist after college. Not enlist, but commission after college. And if a captain were permanently disabled, he may have student loan debt. The numbers do seem a bit skewed, especially when you consider the GI Bill. And the fact that we already have student loan relief for permanently disabled veterans. So what Carr and the other attorneys general are calling for is an automatic forgiveness of the student loans for any disabled veteran, 100% disabled veteran. What mechanism do they suggest to do this? You can't get two departments to talk to each other. I mean, how does it become automatic?
I don't know. I mean, I think you would still have, like you said, I mean, of course there's going to be problems. Arguably, there could be more problems when you're not paying attention to the process. Like, it's just like when you're getting a loan application or you're dealing with it, you're paying your taxes or whatever. You go step by step and make sure that everything is confirmed. If it's automatic, I could see way more people, getting down the road and saying, wait, this was supposed to be, why is my credit damaged? This was supposed to be discharged, or, this seems like there would be more red tape and bureaucratic issues.
Well, and they raised the issue that some of these disabled vets would have difficulty navigating process. And my response to that is we already have advocates for that very purpose. We have disabled American veterans. We have the American Legion. We have the VFW. We have Wounded Warrior Project. We have so many nonprofits that would love nothing more than if a disabled veteran needs help filing the proper paperwork for whatever reason, that they would walk them through the process. And if you need help getting your VA disability, there are nonprofits that'll walk you through the process. So it really seems like it's a solution looking for a problem.
It is an interesting position for the state attorney generals to take in the first place, because they sent their letter to the U.S. Department of Education, and in the press release, one of Chris Carr's quotes was, "It's not fair to ask severely disabled veterans who have to complete paperwork, especially given that some catastrophic disabilities will interfere with their ability to complete the paperwork." Like, since when, I deal with the Attorney General's office a lot, especially from a local government standpoint, and their argument is always, we represent state agencies, we are advocates for the state, for state agencies, blah, 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 blah. So my question is, why are you stepping in here? Because, you're not suing the federal government, and you're not suing another state, and you're not representing a state agency. So from the mission statement that you proclaim that you represent state agencies, you're not even doing that. And sure, veterans are a noble cause. It's not, there are worse things that they can do. But I don't understand what the point is and why the U.S. Department of Education would actually care what they think.
Right, and you hit the nail on the head, as you do, with the pandering. We think you should. Well, you have no place. If you want to run for federal office, do it. And I'm sitting here looking at the process. How do I show I qualify? The VA, the Social Security Administration, or a physician. I mean, it's, my simple mind was easy to be wrapped around how this is done. Now, the length of time it takes, it just does. Anybody who's ever tried to help someone file for disability with the VA, it's a lengthy process, and sometimes you have to get your member of Congress involved. Making it automatic is not going to change that.
Right. There are certain things that just have to happen before you can even qualify for this. And I've never gone through the process, but I would imagine that, like, once you have your permanently disabled status, this is among the easier things that you have to do.
Right.
Because that's a recognized status by government agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you have that, you have your packet, and everything military is a packet. And I'm sure now it's electronic. Well, I'm not sure now. It may still come out on a dot matrix printer, and you have to peel the little hole tabs off the side and stick it into a folder. I don't know. But you take your packet and you present it to the various people. This is the same way you get into the military. You're handed a packet. You hand it to the various people. You go through the process. If you need help, there are so many nonprofits out there that are happy to help you that this really would be in the way of the VA doing what it already has a hard time doing, which is serving veterans.
When, we put this off, it's kind of old news. Like I said, it came out ahead of Memorial Day, but our entire argument was, well, we'll get to it at a later time because nothing's going to happen with it. And I think they knew that, sending this letter, which makes it even worse. If you are sending a letter, or you are staking a claim on a cause, knowing that you're probably not going to get anywhere, it's just tacky.
Well, here's the peer pressure that comes in. 51 other attorneys general. I'm old. There was a Hogan's Heroes episode where members of the SS walk in and talk to the camp commander looking for donations for something. They pull out 2 books and say, we have the white list and we have the black list. The white list is almost full. Yours would be the first on the black list. That's kind of how Carr's got to feel is, I'm not going to be the one left out in the rain standing on principle. Because that makes news too.
Right.
Every other attorney general, especially when you want to get reelected, every other attorney general signed on to this. But Georgia's did not. Georgia doesn't stand with its veterans. So, I mean, I understand the political game that goes into this, just kind of turns my stomach. I don't like the brothers and sisters I served with being used as political fodder. The VA needs to do the right thing because it's the right thing. There's already a process involved in forgiving the student debt. And for those that don't know, at 100% disability, you cannot work. This is incapacitated for whatever the ailment is. You cannot work. This is not 50%. This is not. They assign a percentage to losing a foot, losing a leg below the knee, losing a hand, losing an ear, losing hearing, and they add those things up. If it adds up to 100%, as a condition of keeping, from my understanding, because I'm not in that category. If you're 100%, you don't work. You cannot work. I think you can volunteer. You can work at the church. You can volunteer at the VA. You can volunteer with any of the nonprofits, but you can't work. So any of these guys that did go out, particularly in the case of an officer who has a degree in, let's use a squid here, nuclear engineering, not a really difficult to get, really smart guy. But now he can't use that education that he spent a lot of money getting because he's 100% disabled, got too close to the reactor or something. That, yeah, absolutely. But he also should have the wherewithal to either seek help or file the paperwork himself.
Right.
So, I'll go back to it's a solution looking for a problem. Speaking of, religious liberty group urges nationwide policy allowing Bibles on POW MIA remembrance tables.
I had no idea that this was such a controversial thing. There's a lot out there about this. And people are very emotional, I guess you could say, about these remembrance tables. I had no idea that so many groups were involved in putting them together.
Yeah, and this stems from a lawsuit or a complaint over, it's a table at a memorial and has a Bible under glass. And it's sort of a missing person table where it's roped off. No one else can sit there to remind you that someone who should be here isn't. And part of it is it's got a Bible sitting there.
What are your thoughts on this? Because, I mean, obviously, I think I've made it very clear on this show a number of times that I'm a huge proponent of, separating church and state and all of these things. But I guess maybe I'm almost blind to type of things like this because I've been places where there's been tables set up or there's been a Bible or something, and it doesn't cross my mind to think, wow, that's wrong or that shouldn't be there. Like, I guess that's just not the mindset I am. And I'm sure that sounds like, to someone who's not a Christian, I am a Christian. I don't have any problem telling anybody that. But, I guess to someone who isn't, it would be more obvious, and maybe that's my own ignorance, but I've just never, it wouldn't matter what book of faith is on the table. It wouldn't.
I don't understand evangelical atheism. What do you care? This is not an establishment of religion. It's just not. It's a monument to people who are lost. It's not, as it's called, a repugnant establishment of religion. I don't see that it flies in anybody's face. And look, I'm certainly not the perfect Christian person. I prefer to sleep in on Sunday mornings. Here it is, a repugnant example of fundamental Christian triumphalism, exceptionalism, superiority, and domination. And I just don't see that. I don't see how putting a display that shows respect to those who didn't make it back, who overwhelmingly were Christian. Would they be happy if they put a Quran and a Torah next to it? To me, it doesn't violate the establishment of the governmental establishment of religion. It just doesn't.
Well, no, and the other thing is that a lot of times the tables are put up by other groups, nonprofits, military groups that aren't necessarily like divisions of the VA or anything like that. And so there's also that angle. But there was I think it was maybe a week or two ago, there was a Supreme Court ruling about a cross on government property with regard to, I think, World War I veterans. And one of the arguments in favor, which they upheld that the cross could stand there, was the long-standing nature. We have lots of military cemeteries that have religious, headstones or markings or whatever, and people, knock on wood, aren't yet calling for those to be pulled up. And so the argument was, it's been a long-standing tradition. With these tables, I did a little back research on it, and I guess they didn't put the Bible on the tables for these types of things until 1999-2000 era. But, which is interesting because that's kind of the time that it's not long before all of this started, with the heavy emphasis on not having any type of religious token near anything of government. But I'm with you. It just doesn't strike that nerve of the government is pushing this religious faith on.
And the case you were talking about is American Legion versus American Humanist Association. 7-2 decision that the cross can remain standing, and that's pretty strong. Mm-hmm. That's a strong one. That's does not establish a religion. And I would think that you'd be able to apply that ruling to these tables. That it's, like I said, the evangelical atheists, and I don't have a problem with atheists. I don't. I mean, if everybody's bowing their head to pray before you eat, you just shut up for 2 minutes.
Right.
Resist shoving the fork in your pie hole for 2 minutes. You bow your head, just be quiet. Just show respect for what other people believe. I don't understand why that's such a foreign concept to show respect. If someone has, I don't care what it is. I don't care if I've got a Muslim who says he's got to pull his prayer rug out because it's 2:00. He's got to face east. Whatever, dude. By the way, the world's round, no matter which way you point towards Mecca. But it doesn't bother me. I can shut up for 2 minutes while he does his thing.
I never want to just take the position that, it's not that big of a deal. We should just ignore it. But when it comes to these things, like, my question is always, what is the harm? Like, in order for something to be bad, there has to be harm. It's just like the pledge or the national anthem. You can choose not to stand for those things. You can choose to stand for those things. It's no different. Like, you're choosing to let a table offend you. It's not like you are being strapped to a table and being told you have to read to it before you can be served your dinner.
Right, and the thing is, it's freedom of, not freedom from. You have free expression, you have freedom of religion, and you are free from the government establishing a religion. And in neither case that we just discussed do I see an establishment of any sort of religion. It's just, it doesn't even say you have to stand there quietly around the table. You can walk right by. You're right. We've got this idea that we have a freedom from being offended, and we just don't.
It's over the top.
If there's a freedom for being offended, I owe a bunch of people a lot of money.
Yeah, you better hope there's never a class action.
That class gets bigger by the day.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Okay, speaking of offended, and we're going to tiptoe around this.
Are we? I was wondering how we were going to do this.
Trademark on immoral, scandalous words and symbols was struck down, and the word is FUCT.
How is that pronounced?
FUCT would be my guess. Yeah. This is Eric Brunetti, which I have a harder time pronouncing that than FUCT.
You don't say. I'm shocked.
One I say every day. Is a win for advocates of free speech. The Supreme Court has struck down a ban on trademarking words and symbols that are immoral or scandalous. A 6-3 decision, a little closer. is also a victory for those seeking trademark protection for profane and even racist brand names. Oh, God, they had to go there with it.
Oh, they did. They had to go there. But, okay, first my question is, because I followed this one all the way through. Do you think this guy did this knowing all this was going to happen?
He certainly did it for attention. He's an artist.
Not that it matters. Like, right is right and wrong is wrong, and I support his, right to call his company whatever he wants. And so I support the decision. I just, you had to know as a American that this was going to cause a ruckus.
Did I think that in my lifetime the Supreme Court would be handing down a decision on FUCT, which is how Kagan says it's actually pronounced, because there are dashes between it, even though it has been described as the equivalent of the past participle form of a well-known word of profanity. By whom? Joining Kagan was Clarence Thomas, Ginsburg, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. Interesting to me that it's kind of a blend of the most liberal wing and the most conservative wing of the court, which kind of is where libertarianism is.
I didn't read the dissent. Did you read the dissent?
I did not.
I will before next week, because I want to follow up on this. I want to know why, I know that the courts have long held that, aside from freedom of expression, blah, 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 like those rhetoric words that we all know that come down, or we use to argue anything, the root ideal is that government cannot regulate based on content. Like the same reason that you can't be told to sit down 2 minutes through a speech at an board of education meeting after I just spoke for 5 minutes because they don't like what you're saying, is the same reason. Like, it goes a little bit deeper than freedom of expression. They can't tell this guy, you can own a business, you can do this, that, and the other, but we don't like the content of it, so we're going to regulate it.
Well, Roberts, Breyer, and Sotomayor.
We're all losers anyway, but
well, yeah, Roberts has been a huge disappointment. I thought about writing him a letter asking him to stop using my last name. The quote is, "The First Amendment protects the freedom of speech. It does not require the government to give aid and comfort to those using obscene, vulgar, and profane modes of expression." That was Roberts. Breyer noted that the field of trademark protection is, quote, "highly regulated and with specialized mission." Huh. That doesn't sound statist at all.
Go on.
The list of swear words may be invoking yet again, perhaps to race-based epithets. But these attention-grabbing words, though financially valuable to some businesses, may lead to the creation of public spaces that many will find repellent, perhaps on occasion creating the risk of verbal altercations or even physical confrontations. Really?
Good.
So I guess the Supreme Court just gave me carte blanche. Someone calls me some to punch him in the face. Because they created a space in which that I felt verbally assaulted. Therefore, I had to respond to it. Man, it's, it is funny.
It's not, though.
No,
it is, but it's only funny because I'm listening to
I'm
you
reading
narrate.
it.
Yeah, but it's not funny when you think about the fact that that's the reason they made the decisions they made. That's not funny. It's hurtful.
Well, that they believe that the government is responsible for deciding what's immoral.
Meanwhile, I think they're immoral just by their mere existence. But, you know, the articles about this, and all along they talked about, I think it was a band called the Slants that was made up of Asian Americans, and they said that they could not be denied that trademark protection of their name simply because the term could be viewed as racially disparaging.
What about NWA?
I mean...
Don't make me spell it out.
I'm not going to. I just... You know... People have the right to offend the hell out of everyone else. We do it every week on this show.
Yeah, anybody with good taste?
Yeah. Right. But who cares? Again, who cares? If a guy wants to sell stuff with a label on it, with FUCT on it, I also have a problem. I mean, I can't imagine the legal fees of, because you're talking about the pronunciation of a word, not the spelling of a word, and the spelling of the word is what would appear everywhere and on signage and in the phone book and on, you know, labels that you're selling to children. I don't know, but it's the pronunciation. Like, that's how low we've sunk, that we're in the courts arguing over a word that is not profane when it's written, but could be profane to some when it's said.
You know, it's not the government's place. Put the trademark on. Does anybody else have that name? No? Okay, it's yours. What is so hard about that? You know,
well, nothing to us because we're reasonable, but...
You know, this goes back to the guy who likes to eat donkeys in Florida. You know, the
what?
The guy that had the sticker that says "I eat" in Florida pulled over
clarifying.
And refused to remove any of the letters, and eventually got arrested and released and not charged because the government thought it was their job to protect children who may be reading the back of his truck. Of course, it had to be a pickup truck in Florida that has that on it. But if you want that to be your trademark, you know, I grill donkeys, and you want that trademarked, you know what? If it's not already taken, it's yours.
I agree.
That's the only job of the government in that place is protecting private property. I'm the first one with that trademark. It's the government's job to protect my trademark. And that's the primary role of government is to protect private citizens' rights, private property. Not that you would know that by how they behave.
I think this is only going to get worse, too, because it's not like we're trending. I mean, yeah, we look at it and say, well, that's a pretty good, you know, decision with, 6 in favor? That's pretty strong. But the way that people are offended and the way that people use government to try to strong-arm others into living their way, I have no doubt that we'll continue to see cases like this.
Oh yeah, the first episode that I was on with you, with the strip clubs, that existed for years and years, and then municipalities popped up and decided, well, we just can't have that. We're going to legislate them out of existence because we don't like them. You know, we've, and this is coming from R's and D's. This is not a exclusive to one group or the other, as we can see by the split on the Supreme Court. It's not a conservative versus liberal. It's a freedom versus statist mindset. You know, I have the same view with gay marriage, and for that matter, polygamy. It's not the role of government to legislate morality. Not that I would wish 2 wives on my worst enemy. These are our opinions, and not necessarily those of all in Georgia. Good time to throw that in there.
Yeah, as a reminder.
And if my wife is listening, not my opinion either.
Only if it was 2 Connies, right? That's the only way. She's the best.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Terrible. This is Dave's final episode because he won't be here next week.
And there's not a single law enforcement officer in Paulding County that would lock her up. So they've all met me. Like my own mother would be on TV going, well, it took her that long. Whew, yeah.
Yeah, we stand with Connie.
Yeah, he had a good run. So President Trump has endorsed a congressional amendment to make flag burning illegal.
A constitutional amendment.
A constitutional amendment.
I feel like that's important to add.
Trump tweet, all in for Senator Steve Daines as he proposes an amendment for a strong ban on burning our American flag, a no-brainer.
I love it. So this is my favorite part. Okay, so the Supreme Court, like years and years over and over, says that something is not constitutional. So our government's like, hey, let's change the Constitution. Like, freaking unbelievable, but not unexpected.
So bans on bump stocks, constitutional. Where we actually have an amendment that says, shall not be infringed. And he tweets about banning silencers. No problem. But something that the Supreme Court has held up for years. So let's get into the meat. Introduced by Senators Kevin Cramer, Republican, and Steve Daines, Republican, on Flag Day. Congress voted at least a half dozen times on flag burning amendment between 1995 and 2006, but never could get the 2/3 support needed in the Senate. The closest it got was in 2006, when it only fell 1 vote shy.
Did you know that? I did not know that. Until I did research for the show. Did you know about all the times they've tried to change it before? You're much older than me, so you would have... I mean, I was only in 2nd grade in 1996.
Yeah. I mean, there were only 13 stars on the flag. No, I did not realize, but I'm not shocked. And had they tried it in 2001 or 2002, or 2002, 2003, it may have passed.
That's probably very true. I mean, just ask the Dixie Chicks.
Yeah. Yeah. Their music sucks.
I know, but they're still like ostracized as anti-American, even though so many people have changed their own opinions. They still think the Dixie Chicks are the devil.
Yeah, they're the devil because they forgot their audience.
That is very true.
I mean, look, if you do gangster rap and you come out and say Black Lives Matter is wrong, you're gonna lose your audience. And if your audience is country music and you go to on foreign soil and say stuff like that, you're going to lose your audience. Now, I didn't understand people going out and breaking their CDs and stuff. Okay. A compact disc was an item that people used to carry with them that held their music. That music wasn't always immediately available by download. You had to carry a physical item with you that you could put into a compact disc player.
And a lot of us had these special cases where you could carry like 12 to 20 CDs at a time.
I remember the suitcases full of cassette tapes that you and your friends would get together and open up these suitcases of cassette tapes and trade them and go back and forth and play music. Yeah.
Do you remember like how cool it was when we had CD players with 5 CDs, and it would just rotate songs, and you didn't know what was coming. It was like the original shuffle.
Oh yeah, and you would drive down the road in your buddy's expensive car. I say your buddy's because I couldn't afford it, and you would hear it clunk, clunk, clunk the trunk, and it would change CDs.
Oh, I wish Matt was here to talk about some of the old school stuff.
Matt would remind us that he's from a Pentecostal family, and music was the devil.
In his turtleneck.
In a turtleneck.
That he wore to the dance. Did you see that picture?
No.
We're gonna put it on the page. I hold on. We are way off track.
Oh yeah, we're talking to Matt about going to a dance. Like, yeah, we didn't dance.
But yeah, I don't even know. Oh, you were explaining what CDs are.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh yeah, and he is totally uncomfortable touching that girl. That changed. He has 7 kids.
Right.
Presumably he is. So anyway, yeah. Back on subject. I'll be air traffic control today. Trump tweet in 2016: nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail. Good God, man. Now look, I don't think that your action should be consequence-free. I still think it should come from the government. Like, I reserve the right to punch you in the face.
Right.
They don't put you in jail for spitting on somebody. Spit on me, and I'll beat somebody's ass. Or at least, get my ass trying. Get my ass beat trying. So, there's something called fighting words that we've forgotten in this country. Sometimes you do something and with the intent of provoking a response, and sometimes the response is you get your nose broken. I know this. My nose used to be straight. So, this goes back to Trump being a statist. And for everything people like and dislike what he's done, is he's a statist. He believes the state has the answers to everything, and that we need to change the Constitution to keep people from doing something that he finds personally objectionable. And the Supreme Court ruled in 1989 that flag burning was protected by the First Amendment after a protester was convicted of burning an American flag outside the 1984 Republican National Convention in Dallas. And yes, I remember that. The following year, the nation's highest court reaffirmed the ruling when it struck down legislation passed by Congress to make flag burning illegal. And I remember this. I was a political geek going way, way back.
I've always had a problem with Trump's position on the flag. Always. Even before he was elected, I would never burn a flag. I suppose I shouldn't say never, because you never know what will happen, and that's one of the proper ways to dispose of one. But I would not be. I don't see myself on a public sidewalk lighting a flag on fire and yelling things. That's just not my style. But the idea that, like, you look at the countries that put people in jail for burning flags, specifically like Islamic countries that tie their flag to religion and consider it, like the ultimate crime and things like that, and hard prison time. We're not talking like you spend the night in jail because you were disorderly in public or something. It's frightening. I think it's one of the most frightening things that you can talk, and not because of the flag, but because it speaks to a greater, either a lack of understanding of free speech and constitutional protections and judicial precedent, or a willingness to just undo things that have been in place for a very long time.
And look, Bill Ayers took that picture of him standing on the flag. And I can't promise that I would take the high road if you were doing that in front of me and not, punch him in his smug little face.
Right.
But him wanting a constitutional amendment shows that he understands it's unconstitutional to do.
Right. The same reason Georgia does all this crap with the constitutional amendments. We just change it to
annually.
Yeah. But
we change it annually to fit whatever the political winds are in the state, which no one has a problem with until the other team's in charge.
And I do wonder, because I don't think, obviously, it didn't really come up with Obama. But what would the tone be about banning flag burning or putting people in prison or taking away their citizenship if they burned a flag? What would people say if this was Obama's initiative?
Oh yeah, that he's a statist, that he's trying to control, he's trying to turn us into a Muslim country. This goes back to several other stories. It's a solution looking for a problem. And I guess, not that I'm saying I don't have a problem with burning the flag, is that it's certainly not a problem I see on my street. And if you say more about yourself when you do something like that than you do about the country.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to put yourself in a position to have probably the majority of Americans look down on you, go ahead. But just because I find something, pretty dang tacky and disrespectful doesn't mean I want the government to do something about it.
Not just that, is we're going to create martyrs, people who are willing to spend a year in jail just to do it.
That's a good point.
And why? Because it hasn't even been a thing lately.
Also true.
And I really believe it's Trump preaching to his base. I think he knows he has to get his base, his MAGA base, fired up for the election. And that's who elected him. And it's not a right-left thing. It is absolutely a working man hero image that he has, that he's trying to protect. There's no way it's going to get through the Senate. There's no way. And you're not going to get a convention of the states on it either. Because if they did, they might get together and pass term limits.
That was my other thing. I mean, when you call a constitutional convention, you have to be very specific in your call, but is this worth opening up that can of worms for? I really don't think so. I mean, I'm not a constitutional convention kind of girl. Not at this point. But this would be a terrible reason to start all of that chaos.
Look, if you wanted to, going back to our earlier story, if you want to tweak amendments and say the first is public displays of religion are not a government display or not a government establishment of religion, man, I just don't think it's worth it. But at least that's a clarification on one of the earlier amendments. It's saying this is not an establishment of religion. The only one I've supported was ending prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for that one too.
You were?
I was.
I thought so, but I didn't want to be rude and ask.
Joe Kennedy and I were bringing whiskey in from Canada. And we heard that prohibition was ending and we knew we'd be out of business soon. I'm kidding. I'd never associate with the Kennedy.
There you go. Although JFK was pretty pro-press, I have to give him some credit on his press freedom.
He was, and by today's standards, he'd be of the most conservative of the Republican Party. You know, I don't like JFK for many reasons, and we don't have the time to get into, you know, what I don't like about JFK.
No, but I definitely want to come back to this. I'm writing it down.
Oh, are you?
Yes, this will be a good one. Very opinion about JFK.
Yeah, not my favorite.
Not your cup of tea?
No, but he was the first of the cult of personality, where Richard Milhouse Nixon whooped him in the debate, but looked awful. And mostly I blame women for him being elected.
Well, if you want to go down that road, we can talk about all the things that women have ruined with their dang emotions and voting for feelings and because something sounds like a good idea and who it will help, blah, blah, blah. Like, they gave us the right to vote and this is what we did with it. Don't even get me started.
Why do you hate women?
Because they're ruining things.
Well, Jessica, do you have any closing thoughts?
I mean, I think that was quite the zinger. I'll end with women are ruining America right now.
America.
We'll come back to that, though.
Yeah, we will circle back to that because that is a good one. I hope everyone has a very happy and safe 4th of July. Remember to lay off the booze at least 15 minutes before lighting fireworks off.
That's the same rule for swimming.
It is. But for Jessica Szilagyi, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a happy and wonderful, safe 4th of July, and have a great week.